The evening glow poured softly through the wide glass windows of their modern home, illuminating the picture-perfect couple that everyone envied. He stood tall, dressed in an immaculate suit, his smile sharp and camera-ready, while she, with her gentle eyes and expectant glow, looked every bit the devoted wife. To the world, they were the embodiment of love and success, the husband, a rising businessman adored by society, and the wife, a radiant mother-to-be who seemed to live in a fairy tale. Friends called them the golden pair, neighbors admired their calm, and his colleagues envied the stability he appeared to have built. But only behind closed doors did the truth begin to whisper. His charm, once comforting, had turned into a weapon. The words that once made her blush now carried invisible blades. Every smile he offered in public masked a cold indifference that grew more suffocating each day. She could feel the chill in his touch, the way his eyes no longer lingered on her face but rather passed through her as if she were fading away. At night, while he scrolled through his phone, she would lay awake, one hand resting over her belly, wondering if love could truly die so quietly. Sometimes she caught herself staring at him, searching for the man she had once fallen for. But what she saw instead was something darker, an emptiness behind his eyes, as if the man she loved had been replaced by a stranger wearing his smile. The first signs of decay were subtle at first, almost imperceptible, like cracks forming beneath a seemingly flawless surface. He returned home later and later each night, his excuses increasingly thin, a tense edge creeping into every conversation. The warmth that had once filled their shared moments was replaced by sharp words, dismissive glances, and silences that weighed heavier than any argument. She noticed his temper flaring over the smallest inconveniences, burnt dinner, a misplaced document, even her soft, tired questions about the baby. Each outburst left her shrinking a little more, her laughter replaced by careful restraint, her natural joy dimmed by fear of provoking him. Her pregnancy, a blessing she had once cherished, seemed to irritate him. The gentle touches she longed for went unanswered, replaced by impatience when she asked for attention or comfort. Even the simplest gestures, wanting to share her cravings, feeling a fluttering kick from their unborn child, were met with cold indifference, sometimes even annoyance. She felt her happiness slipping through her fingers, replaced by anxiety and a gnawing sense of danger that had begun to live in the corners of their home. At night, when the house finally fell silent, she would lie awake, her hand resting protectively on her belly, staring at the ceiling and imagining the worst. Each creak of the floorboards, each sound outside the window, made her heart race. She began to fear the unpredictable, the darkness behind his smile, wondering if the man she had trusted could truly harm the life she carried. The love that had once been her anchor now felt like a fragile thread, ready to snap at any moment. Even in the midst of growing fear and constant tension, she held onto a fragile thread of hope, the quiet belief that love could still survive. Every evening, as she sat by the window watching the world outside, she whispered small prayers to herself, asking for strength, for safety, and for the chance that he might return to the man she had once known. She imagined the day their baby would arrive, picturing a moment when the house could finally be filled with laughter instead of dread, when they could sit together, holding their child and smiling as a real family. Her heart ached with confusion. She loved him deeply, yet every cruel word, every impatient gesture, chipped away at her trust. Why can't he see, she thought. Why can't he feel what I feel? She questioned herself constantly, wondering if she had failed somewhere, if her love had been too forgiving, too patient. Yet, even as doubt clouded her mind, a stubborn ember of hope remained. She imagined him kneeling by her side, apologizing for the harshness, embracing both her and their unborn child, promising that things would be different. She clutched her belly tightly and whispered soft vows to the life inside her, promising protection, warmth, and a home free from fear. She prayed not only for her own heart to hold on, but for him to find the humanity she once adored. Even as shadows of danger lingered in their home, she refused to let go of the dream that he could change, that love could still conquer the darkness threatening to consume them. In her quiet mind, hope and fear danced together, shaping the fragile courage that carried her forward. Behind closed doors, the husband's polished exterior began to crack, revealing the turmoil that churned beneath. He stared at his wife across the dinner table, her gentle smile and glowing belly, and felt a cold resentment twisting inside him. The love he once claimed to feel had curdled into irritation, jealousy, and a hunger for freedom he no longer knew how to satisfy. Her presence, instead of comforting him, felt like a chain tightening around his life, binding him to responsibilities he no longer wanted. Every kick of the baby, every soft word, reminded him of the obligations he had long tried to avoid. It was not just her. The mistress had ensnared him in a dangerous mix of desire and ambition. Her whispered encouragements, her calculating glances, had convinced him that leaving his wife behind, and perhaps even removing her from the path entirely, was the solution to his dissatisfaction. She promised him freedom, a life of indulgence without the tether of family obligations, and he found himself unable to resist the temptation. Nights were spent planning, imagining scenarios where he could escape without consequence, his mind darkening with possibilities that would have once horrified him. The husband justified his thoughts with reasoning that sounded almost logical to him. She's holding me back. I deserve to live without this burden. Yet beneath the rationalizations, a deeper, more sinister impulse thrived. He began envisioning ways to ensure that the obstacle in his path, his pregnant wife, would no longer interfere with the life he craved. Every day, his charm remained intact for public appearances, but behind closed doors, he schemed with growing audacity. The warmth of a husband's love had been replaced by cold calculation, and each moment brought him closer to a plan that would change their lives forever. The darkness in his heart, once suppressed, now rose unrestrained, preparing for a night where his intentions would clash violently with fate. The message arrived like a flicker of hope on her phone screen, a simple request from her husband to meet him that evening. Her heart skipped, hesitant yet yearning, imagining that perhaps this was the moment he would apologize, explain, or show the tenderness she had been desperate for. She dressed carefully, choosing soft colors that spoke of calm and trust, smoothing her hair and placing her hand protectively over her belly. Each step toward the door was measured, cautious, but laced with the fragile hope that love might still exist between them. The streets were quieter than usual as she approached the meeting place. Shadows stretched across the pavement, the lamplight flickering in a way that made her unease grow, though she tried to dismiss it as nerves. The air was still, heavy, carrying a tension she could not shake. Every distant car horn, every faint whisper of wind made her pulse quicken, but she clung to the hope that this night could be different. When she arrived, the house was eerily empty, the silence pressing against her like a warning. There was no music, no laughter, no warmth, only the sharp click of her heels on the marble floor echoing through the vast emptiness. She called his name softly, the sound swallowed by the darkness, her voice trembling slightly. Her chest tightened, a premonition gnawing at her heart that something was wrong, though she tried to convince herself it was just nerves. The familiar man she had loved seemed absent, replaced by shadows that danced across the walls. The night, meant to be a reunion, felt sinister, a chilling prelude to the danger lurking just steps away, and yet she pressed forward, unaware of how close she was to the betrayal that would almost cost her everything. A sudden rumble of tires echoed through the empty street, pulling her attention to the dark silhouette of his car approaching. At first, it seemed innocent enough. He rolled down the window, offering a smooth, practiced smile, his voice warm and coaxing as he called her name. "I just want to talk," he said, the words laced with familiarity, the kind that once made her heart flutter. She hesitated, relief and apprehension battling inside her, and took a tentative step toward him, clutching her belly protectively. But something felt off. His eyes held a cold calculation that did not match the words he spoke. The car's engine, previously a distant hum, now seemed unnaturally loud, reverberating through the street like a warning drum. She instinctively stepped back, the soft heel of her shoe scraping against the pavement, a flicker of unease igniting into sharp fear. Her pulse thundered in her ears, and her mind raced, trying to reconcile the man she had loved with the danger she now sensed. In a terrifying instant, he shifted his foot, pressing the accelerator. The car lunged forward with terrifying force, tires screeching against the asphalt. Her eyes widened in horror, heart hammering against her chest as she tried to move out of the way. She stumbled, the momentum of the sudden threat unbalancing her, and her hands shot instinctively in front of her belly. The roar of the engine filled her ears, deafening and unrelenting, a monstrous sound that seemed to mock her vulnerability. Panic gripped her completely. She twisted, her body straining to escape the deadly path of the car, but the vehicle gained speed with every heartbeat. Her legs, unsteady from both fear and pregnancy, trembled under her. Time stretched, each second an eternity, the world narrowing to the car, the engine, and her desperate, futile hope for survival. The scream that built in her throat caught halfway, swallowed by sheer terror, as she braced herself for impact, unaware that the hand of fate was about to intervene in a way she could never have imagined. Just as the husband's car lunged closer, time seemed to slow. Her body froze mid-step, hands clutched protectively over her belly, eyes wide with sheer terror. The roar of the engine drowned out everything else, each heartbeat thundering in her ears like a countdown to disaster. The pavement ahead blurred, the world reduced to the deadly path of the car and the inevitability she had feared. Then, with a sudden screech that shattered the night, a massive truck appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Its headlights cut through the darkness like twin beacons, illuminating the scene in harsh white. The truck swerved sharply, its tires screeching against the asphalt as the driver reacted instinctively to the chaos unfolding. There was a grinding crash as the truck's bulk intercepted the smaller vehicle, the metal groaning under the force of the collision. The husband's plan, meticulously calculated in the shadows, shattered in an instant as his car came to a skidding halt against the truck's towering frame. The air was filled with the acrid scent of burning rubber and the piercing echoes of metal twisting. The wife stumbled backward, heart hammering, as the danger she had felt moments ago dissipated in a rush of adrenaline and relief. She pressed herself against the curb, shaking uncontrollably, her breath ragged. The truck's door swung open, and a man, tall, rugged, and wide-eyed, emerged. His hands trembled slightly, gripping the steering wheel for balance, as he surveyed the scene before him. He had no idea of the drama he had prevented, no knowledge of the deadly intention he had unwittingly thwarted. The husband sat frozen in his car, disbelief and fury twisting his features, his hands gripping the steering wheel as he realized how close he had come to destruction. The wife's wide, terrified eyes met the truck driver's, and in that fleeting glance, a silent understanding passed between them. Her life had been spared, and her unborn child remained unharmed. The night, which had teetered on the brink of tragedy, shifted in an instant, fate intervening in the form of an unknown hero. The sounds of sirens in the distance grew closer, and the world slowly began to reclaim its sense of order, leaving the husband stunned, his malicious plan undone, and the wife trembling yet alive, clutching the life she had fought so hard to protect. Within minutes, the distant wail of sirens grew louder, announcing the arrival of the police. Officers poured out of their vehicles, flashlights cutting through the darkness, and the scattered witnesses quickly gathered, their murmurs buzzing with shock and disbelief. The truth, once hidden behind the husband's charm and calculated smiles, now lay bare. His attempt to run over his pregnant wife had been witnessed by more than one set of eyes. Statements were taken, evidence noted, and the scope of his betrayal and cruelty became undeniable. The husband, who had carried himself with unshakable arrogance for so long, suddenly found his confidence dissolving. Panic replaced his smug composure as officers approached, handcuffs glinting in the streetlights. Every gesture, every word he had relied upon to manipulate and intimidate was useless now. The law would decide his fate. The crowd's judgment, already heavy, pressed in like a tangible force. The mistress, who had fueled his dark intentions, vanished quickly into the shadows, her heels clicking against the pavement as she fled, terrified of being implicated. The wife, trembling yet unharmed, watched as justice began to take its course. The night's horrors gave way to accountability, and for the first time, she felt the weight of fear lifting slightly, replaced by a sense that the evil that had threatened her life could finally be confronted and stopped. The hospital room was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos that had erupted just hours earlier. Soft beeps from monitors and the gentle hum of air conditioning filled the space, yet her mind remained alive with the adrenaline of survival. She lay back against the crisp white sheets, her hand resting protectively over her belly, feeling the faint but steady movements of the child within. Each small kick, each flutter reminded her that not only had she survived, but her unborn child had too, a tiny miracle amidst the night's terror. Tears slid down her cheeks, a mix of relief, gratitude, and a simmering determination that had begun to take root. The fear that had clung to her like a second skin now loosened its grip, replaced by a fierce clarity. She understood, in that quiet hospital room, that life had granted her a second chance, not only to survive, but to reclaim control over her future. She would no longer let anyone, not even the man who had once vowed to protect her, dictate her fate. In the reflective glow of the sterile light, she whispered promises to herself and to her child, to speak, to fight, and to never again allow fear to silence her voice. She thought of the truck driver, an unknown hero whose presence had changed everything, and felt a renewed faith in the unexpected allies life sometimes sent. Strength began to surge within her, a resilient, unyielding force. She would rise, protect her child, and face the world with courage, no longer a victim but a mother determined to ensure that nothing, and no one, would threaten them again. Months later, sunlight streamed through the windows of her modest but warm home, illuminating a life rebuilt with care and determination. She moved gracefully through her daily routine, balancing work, chores, and the gentle demands of motherhood. Her baby, healthy and vibrant, cooed softly in her arms, a living reminder of the miracle that had preserved their lives. Each smile she shared, each laugh that echoed through the rooms, carried with it a quiet triumph over the darkness she had endured. Her heart had healed in ways that were not immediately visible, strength forged in fire, courage tempered by survival. She no longer trembled at shadows or feared the world outside. Instead, she walked with purpose, confident in her ability to protect her child and herself. The memory of the truck driver, the stranger who had intervened at the precise moment of danger, lingered as a symbol of fate's unexpected kindness. In her mind, he represented the truth that even in the darkest nights, life could intervene to safeguard the innocent. She had been broken, threatened, and betrayed, yet here she stood, reborn, resilient, and full of hope. The horrors of that night no longer defined her. They had shaped her into a woman who would never again be silenced, a mother who would always rise, and a survivor who would carry her strength forward into every new dawn.